Also delighted to introduce Amit Koshal, who is an electronics and communications engineer, a registered patent agent, and a law graduate from the Faculty of Law, Delhi University. He started his career as a patent engineer with Motorola India in June 2006 and is now the head of intellectual property practice at Legasis. Suhas Tulparkar is the managing partner of Legasis Partners. He's also the founder director of Legasis Services Private Limited, a legal support service provider, including the IT-enabled legal support services, having the global delivery center at Pune. So I'm requesting Amit to please come on and start this session.
People in the audience. That probably speaks for what the importance of IP is as a perception to the people. Having said that, I think this is a subject which at one level is phenomenally interesting. At other level, the inflection point in India per se for the IP seems to be a bit off. It's not yet arrived, so to speak. But there are some trends and indicators today to kind of show that IP is becoming prominently focused and important as we move from development of products, or as we kind of look at startups, so to speak. Can I get the caller mic, please? Okay, when we talk about intellectual property per se, we know it's property that's kind of created by mind. But therefore, fundamentally, when we look at IP, we say it's a property and it has all attributes of a property. That means the kind of properties, if you were to classify, one is immovable property, the movable property, and then you have intangibles. This is part of intangibles. But fundamentally under the law, a property is one. And the first fundamental principle about property is that it is capable of ownership. So you have right of ownership over a property that you have created, you acquired, you own. So that's the kind of first fundamental and principle that you need to keep in mind, that when you're talking about intellectual property, like any other property, you have a right to own that property. The second fundamental is that you have a right of peaceful enjoyment. What this really means is that nobody can disturb your enjoyment of the property that you have. If you look at real estate like an immovable property, I mean, it's not where anybody can encroach upon your property. You have a right of peaceful enjoyment. Similarly, when we talk about intangibles such as patents, trademarks, copyrights, designs, to the exclusion of others, you have a right to use the property. That's a right of peaceful enjoyment. In return, I mean, if you just take a logical corollary of what happens on the immovable property, that it's your obligation to ensure that you are protecting your property. You are not allowing encroachers to come in your property. You actually fenced it. You've actually created a fort around where you are residing. So it's fenced to fort strategy, which will also apply typically to any intellectual property rights or intangible that we talk about. So these are basically the fundamentals, and therefore, when we talk about intellectual property, the first fundamental principle is that it's property created by your mind. Second, it has all the attributes of any property. So if I were to look at it, the fundamentals to all the enactments which have arisen at specific enactments are coming out of transfer of property laws. So if you are owner of a property, the first fundamental is that you are free to sell it. You are free to enjoy it. So the freedom around that property is what is guaranteed and protected by the substantive enactments. Just to kind of look at what are the types of IPs currently, many times the question arises as to, fine, I have a trade secret, and why should my trade secret be not a kind of a IP? Definitely it is a IP. All know-hows are IP, all show-hows are IP, all trade secrets are IP. You have here, for example, geographic indicators we all know. If you talk about Puneri Misal, that's going to be a GI that could be registered. A Kolhapuri chappal is a GI that could be registered. So obviously these are territorial kind of origins attributed to a product. You have layout designs of integrated circuit, and there is a specific enactment that protects the layouts of integrated circuits on the silicon side. What are popular are the kind of 3 IPs when we look at products, when we look at software, or when we look at creating a product that gets embodied within it, a software or a solution, is patents, trademarks and copyrights. These are 3 basic kind of IPs that get focused around when we talk about products. Patents relate to your inventions. Trademark basically relates to your identity, and copyright relates to the work that you do focused around literary work. So again, in terms of fundamental, very clearly, I think there are 3 different kind of subject matters, and they hold 3 different space. In terms of trademarks, just briefly kind of giving an overview. If you look at this, and very few people would know that names are the trademarks. Find here Sachin Tendulkar, we created almost around 120 trademark applications for Sachin. And 120 trademarks around Sachin Tendulkar as a name. So obviously it is name, it is identity. What you also have is logos. You can actually trademark colors. What is surprising part there, of course packaging, labeling, all that can be trademarked. What is surprising is that these newer, untraditional or unconventional trademarks that are becoming popular across the world, it's sound, and that's where I think Amitabh Bachchan comes in picture. He has his own voice, which is proprietary to him. That's Bachchan's voice, as all of us would recognize. Sorry. That's capable of being registered as a trademark, and trademark applications have been filed to kind of convert Amitabh Bachchan's voice as a trademark. You have signs which are visuals. You have tests. A test of a thing today is being considered in terms of being capable of trademark registration. You have touches, a 2-dimensional surface, a 3-dimensional surface, a kind of a very clear layout of your store. That's insofar as your touch and feel goes, that's capable of being registered as trademark. As I said, store layout, office layouts have been popular. The Apple office layout has been registered as a trademark. It's been granted in US and in European countries. You have smells coming out as trademarks. Now, Chanel number 5 tried to register the smell coming out from their perfume as a trademark, which they failed because the difficulty on kind of looking at these unconventional trademarks is that it has to be capable of graphical representation. And I think it's from that perspective that there are challenges when we talk about smell, when we talk about sounds. How do you kind of graphically represent a sound or a smell? A smell was tried to be articulated as support of a chemical formula, but it didn't pass the muster because chemical formula per se is subject matter of either patents or a work under the copyrights. Similarly, I think what's happening on other non-conventional trademarks is, one, there is a challenge. The second part of it is primarily that if you are able to graphically represent something, that is trademarkable. And that's where smell sounds are being looked at. What is not registrable is a descriptive mark is not registrable. I can go back in the history of trademarks in India. The first trademark application was filed by the then Lever Brothers Limited in India, which became Hindustan Unilever now. Sunlight was a brand. Sunlight was the first trademark to be kind of applied for registration in Indian Trademark Registry. I worked with Hindustan Lever and we kind of traced back as to how this happened, because sunlight is descriptive in nature. Despite of that was the first trademark that got registered, though it was descriptive, because primarily it was shown that the goodwill has been created around the mark, and therefore it no longer remained descriptive when it got applied to a yellow soap cake. That's how sunlight got registered. The rest is history. I mean, even today you will find there are certain marks, and that's very important from a startup and e-commerce perspective. If you look at any of the names of all popular e-commerce portals, they are a combination of two words, whether it is Snapdeal or Flipkart or any of these popular kind of e-commerce portals today. They have applied for trademark registrations. Whether actually trademark registration will be granted or not is a question mark, because they're descriptive in nature. Although it's combination of two words, but it is not giving a third word which is non-descriptive. It's descriptive work, but still the applications are pending, applications are being pursued, and therefore, I think the applicants are trying to create other IPs around the trademarks which are descriptive in nature, although applications may have been pending. Registration, again, exclusive, non-exclusive and associated marks is something which is as a fundamental need to look at. You have all the taglines. Taglines do not give you exclusive rights, but taglines in association with your primary mark as an associated mark, both put together could be a different trademark from the parent trademark that you have. So there are associated marks there. Registration of trademarks, I think it's compulsory and mandatory to register your trademark if you want to claim it to be a trademark. There is no option there, which is unlike the copyrights. In copyrights, you probably have option as to whether you want to consider that for registration or not.
And so, as talking about registration of trademarks, I happened to talk to a few people here in the morning. I mean, they have such fancy business cards with fancy logos, beautiful names. And when I asked them, have you trademarked them? They were like, no, we haven't trademarked them. So you know what I'm going to do tomorrow? I'm going to go home and trademark them. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just kidding. See, you guys have beautiful logos, beautiful names, which you have thought through, and now that is your business identity. I request, please apply for trademarks and secure your IPs. So tomorrow, does somebody else do not steal those trademarks and do not take away your identity. Please do not let others take away your IP.
Arising out of this compulsory registrability of trademark, it's something which kind of gives rise to the criminal liability. There are various people that I know of in business who believe that they have coined their own name as trademark. Even without making an application for registration of trademark or service mark, they will add either TM or SM insofar as service mark is concerned. The law is absolutely clear that you are entitled to apply TM or SM only and only if you have made an application and your application is pending for registration. Secondly, by merely filing an application, you're not entitled to, entitled to say this is registered or R, which is kind of a connotation, there's symbol for having registered the trademark. Again, it's a criminal offense if your application is merely pending and you apply R2 wherever you're putting your name. We've seen this quite often that people have been doing this, and when somebody complains to it, then it leads to criminal prosecution. There's generally a kind of a 10 years horizon for trademark registration. After 10 years, you need to renew your applications. It's not that your right goes away. Your right would continue if you file your renewal applications in time. Then there is a concept called defensive registration. Many times we've realized that there is a use or a proposed use that you want to kind of articulate when you're filing a trademark application. There are various other classes, because generally what happens, registrations goes by 6-digit nomenclature or NICE classification, which is globally accepted protocol. And you can kind of register your trademarks in various categories or various classes of the products, the goods and services. What you generally do, for example, if you have Kingfisher as a mark which is applied on alcohol or the beverages, you have Kingfisher as airlines, as a defensive registration you apply in other classes also, such as service marks, such as stationery, such as apparels, such as everywhere. Now therefore what happens typically in India, a defensive registration becomes a primary registration when we talk about surrogate advertising. So when you really can't advertise about bagpiper as spirit or alcohol, you are actually applying bagpiper, registering it as a defensive registration first in the category for bottled waters, but subsequently that's used towards brand building on the advertisement. So what happens is that while where you have registered it as a defensive trademark, you are creating a goodwill and a value around it through your advertisement spend and media campaigns. Therefore, the valuations become skewed with respect to primary mark and kind of defensive marks there. Very clearly what happens is that if you don't use your trademark for a period of 5 years, it's liable for rectification of register, as we call it, which means it could be struck off from the register based on a complaint made by anybody. And generally what happens is, and this is becoming very prominent again, you have old marks. In a pharma company, when you come out with a brand, you actually register various variants, and that's where all you do is you promote 1 or 2 brands, but rest about 8 brands are not used over a period of 5 years. So if it's not necessary that when you carry out a trademark search and you realize that there is already a registered mark there, it's not necessary that that mark is being used. You can actually move for rectification of the register, knocking off that mark and creating a space for yourself. There's another kind of a provision which is important. If your company's name contains or is a registered trademark of someone else, again, your company's name could be struck off under the Companies Act related provision. Earlier there used to be high penalties, now the penalties have been dropped down under Companies Act 2013, but the fact still remains that you may have to change your company's name. And therefore what happens is, many a times we have realized that the company's name may not be registered in India, but there is a trademark registered in US somewhere. Today or tomorrow, if that company was to come to India, they would have a cross-border goodwill attached to their marks. And therefore, to that effect, they would force you to change your company's name. Therefore, whatever kind of brand identity that you have created, that will go down the drain. These are some of the kind of critical issues on, Amit, you want to kind of look at patents?
Yeah. I'll just also summarize trademarks a bit for the benefit of people who joined us late. Trademarks are your business identity. Please do not lose them. The logos, the captions, your fancy names, which you have thought through for months and years, I request you, please do not lose them. Tomorrow somebody can trademark them and then you have no option but to work for him. Special provisions like in trademarks are, if you have not applied for trademark, please do not say TM or please do not say R on top of your name. That amounts to criminal liability. It can extend up to 3 years of imprisonment, fine, or both. So in the intellectual property ambit, only trademarks has criminal liability. So do not mess around with trademarks. Patents and copyrights have, of course, some penalties, but those are not criminal liabilities. Trademarks has criminal liabilities, please use them carefully. Of course, you have 10 years for your trademarks. You can take 10 years, it's valid for you, then you can pay the fee and it can be extended further. So those are pretty much the nuances of trademarks. So trademarks protect the identity of your business. We go to the next, intellectual property. Sure, bring it on. We can interact now, it's best time.
All right, so maybe, I don't, okay. So first question would be, so what happens, I'm probably, it's a very basic question, but what happens if I speak for a radio advertisement in Amitabh's voice? What happens to me?
Swaz, you want to answer that?
Yeah, I think what would tend to happen, and this happened quite critically here, is that in one of the Gutka advertisements on FM radio, his voice was used. He's really objected to it. He's gone back and said, sorry, it's disparaging my reputation. One of the additional grounds while he's saying it's disparaging my reputation is saying that it's also a violation of my trademark. So long as he does not object, for example, owner of the property, it's like again any other property. If you have a vehicle and somebody else is using your vehicle and you don't object to it, it's fine. But if you want to prevent him from using your vehicle, you will object to it. So if Amitabh were to object to his imitation of voice on radio, you will have to stop.
But even if I have a genuine Amitabh's voice, I do not have in my case, but somebody might have it. So even in that case, he can object?
Yeah.
Then in that case, you can apply for revocation of trademark.
No, technically what Amit is saying that you can actually apply for revocation of trademark, saying that this is not your propriety, so to speak.
Basically, trademark has to be new. So Amitabh Bachchan would have got a trademark because his voice has certain features. Now, if you go to the trademark office and prove that Amitabh Bachchan voice has nothing special features, I also have it, why are you giving him a trademark? I can have a trademark, so you better cancel his trademark. So even after he has got a trademark for his voice, you can go back to the trademark registry and prove that there was nothing special about his voice. All his voice features I also have, so please cancel his trademark. That's called trademark revocation or trademark cancellation.
See, I'll just give you a kind of a corollary and a parallel example in case of Sachin Tendulkar. We tried to register Sach as a mark for him. SACH, which is also a brand where he has allowed Future Consumer Private Limited to develop, and you may have seen such as kind of oil, edible oil, such as milk, and there are some products there in the market which carry such as a brand. When we tried to register it, Sacha Sauda, which is registered by Akali Dal, objected to our registration of such as a mark for Sachin Tendulkar. And it's still pending, but the fact is that we may have to withdraw ourselves from such, because such in Hindi would mean truth. It cannot really be attributed to Sachin. So it would be kind of generic. But therefore, during the application phase, if somebody comes forward, if taking your example, if Sudesh Bhosle would have come forward and said, I can imitate your voice and there's no great, it can't really be attributed to you as in Mr. Amitabh Bachchan, I think probably it would have gone through the examination route in a very different manner. I wouldn't say whether he would have got it or he wouldn't have got it, because I think the way kind of Amitabh Bachchan also convinced the trademark authorities was really his intonations and the various other attributes attached to it.
So another question, sorry, please go ahead.
Just add to your point from the enforcement point of view. Two voices may be similar, but they cannot be same. Kindly remember that.
Yeah, that's true.
That should take care of your question, because in enforcement, when we do voice analysis, the frequency, the wavelength of no two voices would be same, could be similar.
And that makes it pretty clear. Okay, so the second question is, if we need to trademark something, what is the period involved right from the application towards we get it now as trademark registration done? Second, what is the cost involved? So some around
We will come back to that. We're going through the toolkit approach.
Okay.
With picking up marks and addressing these questions.
Sure.
Just briefly saying, it takes between 1.5 to 2 years for a registered mark today in India.
All right.
And it cost depend, the fees for filing depends on if you're an individual, you're a company and stuff like that. So we'll come back to that.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You had a question, right? Okay. So when you're applying for trademark, you're thinking of new names, please do not go for dictionary words. Dictionary words are not trademarkable. Think of new names, not new words, not existing in dictionary. Even if you're fusing two words, for example, Snapdeal is actually not a fusion of two words, they're two different words. For example, let's say explosity is a fusion of explosive and velocity. That can qualify for a trademark because it's not, can qualify for a trademark because it's not a word in the dictionary. However, we have to check whether explosity has been trademarked by somebody else or not. That's of course a criteria.
So similar to registering a company, is there a website where you can search what is already trademarked and not?
Yes. So our,
Yeah, I think very clearly what tends to happen is that you need to do a search on what is, one is of course, look at the dictionaries and you will find if it's a word in the dictionary, forget about it being trademarked. Second, if there is already a registration about that name anywhere in the world, and that's where you'll have to do a search. Now the difficulty arises that you can do a search on a word, but very clearly a phonetically similar word also would amount to an infringing trademark. Therefore, you will have, when you carry out a search, you will have to really look at creating meta tags around the search. Now that the software tools are available, that you can actually create meta tags around those words and see whether there's something which are kind of similar to these words which are already registered. The third aspect when we talk about is that all grammatical variations of that word, including the translated word of the trademark, would amount to an infringement if you're using it. So obviously many a times we have realized, and I think Pune is very popular for using the kind of Devanagari words around some other English word and apply it to business. So actually when we do a search on the trademark, if you go to doing it very simplistically, you can probably do it and come back to say that whether I can apply or not apply. But you will have problems as you move forward towards examination if you have not done a thorough search using meta tags, using phonetically similar words, using translations and things like that.
But how foolproof is this repository of various trademarks?
Currently it's pretty online in terms of actually registered marks. Applications up to a particular date are available online on InfoDoc in India. So it's pretty much there with respect to registered trademarks. Now,
Shouldn't it be international?
now the international, there are some treaties and there are kind of unified trademarks, ICANN and UCANNs are there, but that tends to become complex as you move from one country to other country. It's an art. If you ask me, during our early days of a career, we were told what is a good trademark search would mean. How do you conduct that? There are some skills and tricks around which you will have to do.
Then you also said 5 years, if you don't use a trademark, then you are liable,
For cancellation.
who determines those 5 years?
5 years from the date of registration
Who
being.
determines?
Sorry.
for example, suppose
If I am objecting to that trademark and you are not using it, I will say that it needs to be struck off from the register for non-use. Onus is on me then to prove, and then the kind of theory of preponderance of evidence will be on you. Once I make an allegation you're not using it, then the onus is on you to prove that you're using it.
So basically, non-use is a wonderful concept.
We'll take the question.
I have a question. You just explained that multiple words which are already existing cannot be taken as a trademark. My question is, I already have a trademark on my name called Elastic Alphabets. Now, I'm confused whether it's already been issued.
Sorry, what is the name, please?
Elastic Alphabets.
Elastic Alphabets, and that's registered as a mark.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
So, I'm confused. I mean, it's registered and you says it.
No, you will not have exclusive right over any of the words. The manner in which you are using these two words with kind of color combination and the way you're graphically representing it would be the trademark granted to you. If you look at your certificate, you'll probably get a disclaimer there saying you do not have
plain vanilla Roman, no color, nothing, black and white.
No, the registration certificate
Yes.
will tell you that you
It's mentioned same, plain vanilla, without any color and without any
Disclaimer.
naming on the word of alphabets.
there is no disclaimer there.
It's already, I already have certificate.
No, when you got the certificate, generally certificate says that you do not have exclusive right over these words. That would be their part.
Not individual words. Yes.
Yeah, that would be part of the
Yes,
certificate.
yes. But I can use that word combination as a register.
The manner in which you have represented and you have been granted a trademark registration, you can use it. Now, there is another concept under the IP law which is called passing off. And therefore, even though you may have a registered trademark, a passing off action can still lie if your product or your trademark or your business is copying someone else as a pass off business.
So basically, when you get a trademark registered like Elastic Alphabets, the manner in which you got it, for example, some color combination of plain vanilla is what you can protect. If somebody uses it in some different format, different words, different combinations, you can't stop them. So trademark basically, when we say non-use can amount to cancellation, it's like why that concept is there. Today what is happening in the domain name world, you think of a name and it's all being taken because people are sitting there just trying to just buying domain names in putting in their cupboard and asking for huge money when you want to buy from them. Since this since this concept should not be followed in trademarks, so nobody is using those domain names. Now since the government does not want people to just accumulate trademarks, they are putting a condition that you have to use the trademark as well. And if you're not using them, for example, if I have a trademark for XYZ, tomorrow you want trademark, and if I'm not using for some years, and if you want XYZ, you can come to me and say, I want XYZ, you're not using it. So you can get my trademark cancelled because I did not use it for a particular period of time. Sure.
Sir, in 2009, there was a movie called Billu Barbar actually. Shah Rukh Khan's movie, sir. Red Chillies production. So that time, there was a big issue regarding the name of that Billu Barbar. And finally, the Red Chillies were forced to change the name from Billu Barbar to Billu. And this was not offensive actually, if you see. But they kind of made an issue out of it. So how can we resolve such kind of issues? I mean,
this is settled by Supreme Court currently in Desi Boys.
Okay, sir.
Okay, this judgment came in last month from the Supreme Court on the Desi Boys. They said there is no exclusive right on the titles, although it relates to copyrights. Because if you go to really, trademark Desi Boys, you won't get. If you go to trademark Billu Barbar, you won't get it. It's primarily an issue under copyrights. So the Supreme Court has clarified that under the copyrights, in order to claim a copyright over the work, which is a literary work, I know Billu was settled in Delhi High Court, but that was not final word of the law. In Desi Boys, where Supreme Court clearly has laid down this law now, that there are no copyrights or IP rights vested in titles of the movie. What happens practically is that there is Indian Producers Guild today. With the guild, I can register a title. If I register a title with the guild, since most of the producers are members of the guild, it's kind of an industry body there. Like you have Advertising Standard Council of India, you have kind of Indian Film Producers Guild there, and the guild then will not allow anyone else, any other producer, to come out with a similar title. That is the practical aspect of it, and that's the industry practice that's emerging. But the Supreme Court's final word on it, no copyrights, no IPs on the title of the movie.
But Suhas, how do you explain then the film Devdas? It has been made.
No. So what happens is, what happened in Devdas is, Devdas was written by Sharat Chandra long ago. Now Devdas, when the first time the movie was made, the rights were given on all literary work of Devdas by whoever was the copyright owner of Sharat Chandra. To, I think it was
Sanjay Bansali.
No, not Sanjay Bansali. It was Satyajit Ray who the first movie.
Okay, first movie, okay.
Bimal Roy. Sorry, I think it was Bimal Roy.
Even Bimal Roy, there was Saigal.
Even before Bimal Roy, there was a cycle. The first movie, therefore, the concept at that point in time was, if I have granted you a license to produce, because you need a license from a copyright holder, or you need an assignment of the property for you to exploit that work. That's where the first time license that was granted to make a movie included grant of all rights, copyrights relating to the literary work, including the title of the book. It is title of the book. That's how it got evolved into a movie. What happens in copyright is that copyright subsists with the original author and the owner, and 30 years after his death. Okay, after 30 years of the expiry of the original author, it's at world at large. That's the fundamental of the copyright.
We'll discuss that in detail when we do
We'll
copyright
kind of
slide.
come back to that.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I have a question. What amounts to the use of a trademark? For example, if I have a logo and I have registered it, this came out while you're telling me that it should be used for 5 years, and I have a domain name. Now, I create one page, I just put that logo over there. Does that amount to using the trademark, or
Yes,
does
it
it
does.
not?
Yes, it does. It
Thank you
does.
so much.
Sorry, Amit.
Yes. Any other question on trademarks? We can ask later as well. We move to the next intellectual property, which is patents. So trademarks protect your identity of the business, or for the identity of the business, and patents are for the inventions that you guys create. Now, what can be patented? I mean, a lot of software professionals come and meet us, and as our clients as well, and they ask us, what can we patent? So you can patent a product. It can be a soft product as well, or you can patent a process. A product can be patented, a process can also be patented. Now, what qualifies for a patent? For example, suppose Suhas has an invention. What do we do? When we have, let's say, since we have this NASCOM product conference on software, we talk about software inventions here. If your invention is new, and if your invention is non-obvious, thirdly, your invention should have an industrial applicability. So which means your invention should have to cross the 3 hurdles. The hurdle of newness, novelty, it has to be new, it has to be non-obvious, and it has to have industrial applicability, which means it should be put in some use in the industry. कुछ use होना चाहिए उसका, आपकी invention का. Now, for example, you cannot patent a method for committing suicide. This process of committing suicide has no industrial use, so it's not patentable. So all the inventions have to qualify these 3 things. You had a question?
It could be a crime.
Illegal objective cannot.
Yeah. So when, how do we see newness? When somebody comes to us with an invention, we check, we do a search, a global search, which means we check whether your invention is new around the globe or not. If somebody has done a similar thing or the same thing in the US or Europe or wherever outside India or in India, then your invention is not new, therefore does not qualify for a patent. So we call it a patentability search to see whether invention is new around the globe or not. If somebody has taken a patent for it outside India or has been using it outside India or in India, it is not new, and hence it could not cross the first hurdle. The second thing that we check is, suppose the invention is new, then we check whether the invention is non-obvious. Now, a lot of inventions get stuck in the non-obvious hurdle, which means a lot of inventions are new, but they're obvious as well. Therefore, they don't get a patent.
Give an example.
I'll give you a few examples. I'll give you examples of what will be obvious or what will not be obvious. For example, suppose I'm just thinking of an invention right now, obvious invention, I can think of one. Suppose I have this pen, I have this pencil, okay? And I stick an umbrella on it. With a tape, I just stick an umbrella on it. And I call this an invention. Is it new? Perhaps. A pen with an umbrella? Perhaps it is new. So it qualifies the first hurdle? Yes, it is new. It has an industrial applicability. Can it be put to some use? I can say yes, during rain I can write and I can save my paper from getting wet. It has some use. Is it obvious or non-obvious? Well, that's where the inventions generally get stuck up. Now, when I'm filing a patent application for this invention with a pen and umbrella, the examiner, so there are 4 patent offices in India, Mumbai, Delhi, Kolkata, Madras. When you're filing a patent application, it goes to a patent examiner, and then he will examine whether the invention is new, non-obvious, or has industrial applicability. Now, a pen with an umbrella is new, but is it obvious? Yes. What I'm doing is merely combining two existing stuff, two existing things with a glue or some tape. When you go to, let's say, somebody like a patent attorney or like ourselves, what we do is we try to guide you how you can make an obvious invention into a non-obvious invention. For example, in this case, I might suggest the inventor to link the functionality of the pen with the functionality of the umbrella, which means there can be a hinge mechanism inside the pen linked to umbrella, so that switching on of the pen and switching on of the umbrella is together, and similarly switching off of the pen and switching off the umbrella are together. If there's a hinge mechanism which is combining the functionality of two existing components and you have modified the way they work, that might qualify for non-obviousness. Similarly, recently I was reading about a patent filed by Apple. Now, what Apple did recently in a new invention, you might see that invention maybe in iPhone 7, 8, 9, whatever. They filed a patent on this new software. What they said is, now all of us use smartphones, right? What they said is, if you, let's say, are typing here, and if you're walking as well, so you're typing, let's say, whether you're typing on an email, you're typing on WhatsApp, you're typing on whatever. So the moment you're typing and walking, so your phone will understand two things. The phone has a gyroscope. That means when you're walking, the gyroscope of the phone will know that the phone is in motion. And since you're typing, the OS of the phone understands that there's a keypad open and then somebody is typing. So when somebody is typing and the phone is in motion, the camera will switch on. And you have a small window here which will show you the floor. So on fulfillment of two conditions, typing and motion, my camera will switch on, and let's say I will have a small, let's say, window here which will show me the floor. So I can type, I can walk, and I can see the floor. so that I don't stumble over any hurdle. Now, Apple has filed a patent for it. You might just see that in the next iPhones. It's new. It is new. It has industrial applicability. It has industrial applicability. Is it non-obvious? Well, let's see what the patent examiner have to say. Now, how do you prove non-obviousness? Has somebody done it? Till now, no. Was gyroscope existing? Yes. Was typing existing? Yes. Was switching on of a camera existing? Yes. But then, switching on of a camera based upon a gyroscope and based upon the OS input that the keypad is on, was that known? No. Does it have some advantages? Yes. If you're able to prove that your invention has some non-obvious advantages, you will most likely jump over the non-obviousness hurdle and most likely get a patent. So, a lot of inventions today in the world are new. If you're able to prove non-obvious advantages of your invention, software, pharmaceutical, electronics, mechanical, whatever field that may be, you can most likely qualify for a patent. So we have patents, processes, non-obvious, industrial applicability. Now, when you have a patent, what can you do? What right do you have? You have the right to, of course, enjoy it, enjoy your patent, make it, sell it, use it, and also, of course, the right that you can stop somebody from making, selling, using, importing your invention from somewhere in the country. That's the right you get. It's like a right of any property, right? If you have a right on some property, you can enjoy the property, you can also stop somebody from trespassing it. Similarly, if you have a right on a patent, you can use it yourself and also stop somebody from copying your invention. 20 years plus jurisdictional limitation, what does that mean? When Edison made this bulb, it was an invention. For 20 years, he can stop somebody from making this bulb. After that, you and I can make the bulb. 20 साल के बाद invention comes under the public domain. You can make it, use it, do whatever. A patent also has a jurisdictional limitation. क्या मतलब? If you're filing a patent in India, it is just valid in India. If somebody is copying your invention in the US, you can do nothing about it. So therefore, if you want to do something about it, file your application in the US as well. If you, let's say, have potential clients in Japan, potential clients in Europe, so it's generally country-wise except Europe, where you put an application in Europe and it is covering 27, 28 main countries, the countries which matter. So a lot of our clients, sure.
But the same vehicle is being sold as name called Mahindra Raw in Europe. So regarding this particular patent rights, I just want to know, like, is there any particular boundary or something?
That's about a business strategy of calling them a different name in different countries.
Exactly, the same name, the name of Scorpio, the same vehicle is being there in Europe, sir.
It is being sold by Mahindra.
No, not Mahindra, sir. Some other company.
So then, in that case, if let's say
so that other company who's been selling their vehicle as Scorpio, they cannot come to India and sue them for this name of Scorpio, sir.
If I get your question correctly, let me paraphrase it.
Yes, sir.
What it's saying is Mahindra has a vehicle in India called Scorpio, right?
Yes, sir.
And also there's a vehicle in, let's say, Europe called X. Are you saying that X is being made and sold by somebody else, but it's actually Scorpio?
It's actually Scorpio, sir.
So what happens in those cases, Mahindra would be under some kind of licensing agreement with that company, some kind of royalty arrangement. If they sell, let's say, 10,000 units of those X cars, they will give X amount of money to Mahindra. Those licensing agreements, those royalty agreements are always there in companies. For example, a lot of, let's say, Toyota also makes complete cars and sell it and give it to a lot of Australian companies just put their stamp and sell in the market. So the Australian companies have licensing agreements with Toyotas for the technology, for the cars, for the trademarks, for the patents, and that's the arrangement that you can get in, because ultimately it's the Scorpio's property or Toyota's property, and it's up to them how they want to license it out or lease it out. Or you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think let's presume for a moment that what you're saying is that there's somebody actually selling Scorpio with his own manufacturing capability, which in India is called Scorpio and in Europe it is called Rock, whatever. When we look at really, is there anything which is, forget the technology part of it, today technology is let's say is available, which is really the know-how and the show-how part of it. Is there any patent embodied in Scorpio, or let's say that you will have at least 1,200 kind of accessories within a vehicle. So actually, does Mahindra have anything which is called as invention, which has gone into manufacture of Scorpio, is the first question that we will have to look at. When we did some analysis for Tata Technologies here in Pune with respect to electric car, we studied the entire family of patents in the automobile industry, because EMO was one which was kind of launched by Tata Technologies as a car, and we realized that in the automobile industry everything is off patent, in as much as what Amit said, that Edison's patent continued for 20 years. After that everybody was free to kind of manufacture a bulb even in the US or I don't know, in UK. Therefore, most of the part of the automobile technology today is off patents. There are some elements which are patentable, and if that is being copied by Raw, then Mahindra can sue them and stop them from copy of that particular aspect of the automobile. I mean, we'll come back to Bajaj and TVS as a similar example and a kind of a fight that broke out. Sure. Sir.
Just to add to this, if Scorpio was a trademark taken by some other company in Europe, because that's a different jurisdiction, so that company can continue using the trademark Scorpio even for automobiles, and Mahindra could have taken the Scorpio trademark for India as a jurisdiction. So then it's possible, right?
Then it's possible. However, what will happen is when you actually do the trademark registration, a name like a Scorpio again is generic name. You won't get exclusive right. Therefore, if you look at the entire ad campaign, it was always Mahindra Scorpio. Therefore, you created a brand. You may have registered Scorpio as a trademark. You would not get exclusive rights. You would associate it necessarily with Mahindra and make sure that Mahindra Scorpio is the brand. That's where the goodwill would be created.
Thank you.
Sorry, which patents? Design patents.
Industrial designs.
You want to come back to that? Yeah, we'll come to that. We'll come to
That's called industrial designs.
Industrial designs and patenting, we'll come to that.
We will discuss it in a different slide.
Sure.
Talking about the patents, like you said that whatever we have patented in India, it's applicable for India. For US it is different, for Europe it is different. So suppose if we want to patent something in India as well as Europe, so do we have to file two different applications simultaneously or what?
Yeah. So how it works is, since unless I'm assuming, yeah, sorry.
Is there like trademark non-use expiry for patents?
Sure.
That's interesting.
Is there a non-use expiry for patents?
There is a compulsory licensing primarily.
I'll come to that, yeah. So answer both the questions. What happens is, in India, there is a law, the Patent Act, or the patent law. The law says that if you're an Indian, if you're a resident of India, you have to first file your patent application in India. a lot of our clients, a lot of our inventors who are from India, let's say a second inventor is in the US, they don't want to file in India first. So in those scenarios as well, you can take a permission from the patent office and file a patent application, let's say outside India first. Having said this, suppose you want to first file in India. So what you do is you come with an invention, you come to us, or let's say any patent attorney. We understand the invention, we see whether it is new, non-obvious, it has industrial applicability, and we draft the patent application. So drafting means it's a document of 30, 40, 50 page document which will explain entirely what your invention is, what you did, what problem you solved, how you solve those problems, some drawings, it's called a techno-legal document we call it, okay? The patent draft is ready. The draft is ready for filing. The draft can be filed in India Patent Office. We file in India. After you file in India, you have 1 year of time to file the application in other countries. You can file in the US, Europe, whatever, within this 1 year. From the filing date of 1 year. You have another, this is one methodology. In another methodology, you file in India, you file a PCT application. PCT is a Patent Corporation Treaty. Basically, it's a treaty. It is being signed by India and by 197 countries as well. So it's like a treaty which is being signed by a lot of 198 countries that we will cooperate with each other on patent matters. Which means, let's say if I file in India first, and if I file a PCT application, which is a patent under the Patent Corporation Treaty, the PCT application has to be filed within the 12 months again. And for the PCT application, you have 18 more months to decide which all countries you want to file in. This is too technical. If you have more questions on this filing, we have a booth outside. We can answer those questions there as well. But generally, you can say within 1 year to decide which countries you want to file in, apart from the first country. Coming to your question of non-use of a patent, what happens is in India, it's just in India, it's not in other countries. For example, suppose you have a patent in the US, even if you don't use it, you are still good to hold the invention and not give it to anybody. In India, you have to file working statements after every 3 years, which means if you are, let's say, have an invention of, let's say, Apple's invention that I just described. Suppose Apple has got a patent for this invention of moving and the camera getting switches on and blah, blah, blah. Suppose Apple is not using this invention. For 3 years, they have not used it. What do we do about it? Samsung or Nokia can go to Apple and can file for a request in the patent office saying that since you're not using the invention, you compulsorily license it to me. So there is a provision in the patent law that if you are not using the invention for 3 years, for 3 consecutive years, your patent, so in trademark, if you don't use it for 3 years, it gets cancelled. In patent, if you don't use it for 3 years, you have to compulsorily license your invention to somebody who is asking for it. A couple of cases in India have happened in the drug era, Bayer versus Natco, where the generic companies, the Bayer company had some patents, the Natco had some patents, and or it's vice versa, right? Bayer, right? Yeah, Bayer had patents, right? So Bayer had patents of some drugs in India, and they were not manufacturing those drugs in India. Natco, a generic pharmaceutical in India, went to Bayer, told them that you're not manufacturing this, you have patents and not manufacturing. People out there, poor people out there are not able to access the drugs which are very, very important to their health. So Natco filed an application for compulsory license that you license it to me. I will pay you royalty, but you have to license it to me. This all compulsory licensing they have to do because Bayer was not manufacturing, either not manufacturing or was not manufacturing enough, quote unquote, not able to meet the public demand. So if certain criteria is fulfilled of non-use, of not manufacturing enough, or of not importing enough, then you might be susceptible to compulsory licensing. But that doesn't happen in software. That generally happens in drugs. A patent on use is not possible.
A mere new use, this is the Novartis judgment, a mere new use
Of the
a
same
known
substance.
molecule will not be eligible for patent. For the use for which he filed.
If
For the
it's a
claims
new
that-
molecule, let's say you have molecule A, right? Suppose a company, let's say X, has a molecule A. They got a patent on molecule A. If you come up with a new process of manufacturing molecule A, you have a process patent. A new process of manufacturing A. But if you're just using molecule A for something else, you don't have a patent there. So your patent has to be a process of product. You don't get patent on the use. The law says the patent has to be on process or product. Any more questions? Sure.
I'm not sure whether you cover it later, but when you're talking about a product, so when you're talking about a product patent, does it necessarily have to have a process associated with it? Because typically, let's say supposing in the software industry, you always have a product, but then that can be made using different processes, different technologies, okay? So how do you protect the product? Because the point is, can you have purely a product patent without any process associated with it? Yeah. So irrespective, whoever makes it with any other process, any other technologies, my product is my product and that should be protected. Is it possible?
Correct.
So is there a special category to it, or when you call it a product, then it is...
No, the difficulty when we talk about the product in the software domain, or let's say IT domain, broadly putting it, what's likely to happen is that that product will get hit by the provision which says that mere computer program per se is not patentable. Okay, because there's some programming involved when you're talking about the final product. That is where the challenge arises. Whereas actually, theoretically and technically speaking, your final product could be completely patented. You know, the manner in which you open a Coke can, the can opener, that's patented. That final product is patented. It's possible to patent a final product. That's what the law allows you to do that. It says new process and new product. That can happen.
So the question is, let's say, so we have a banking product, which is probably, let's say an example of a core banking product, software. So can it be ever patented or it can't be patented? Because I think
you will have to go back. You will have to go back to say that is it a computer program per se? Then it is not productable. And I think world over there is a debate happening on what is this per se word means. Okay, there's a huge debate, and we can kind of continue talking about for days together on what is patentable in this and what is not patentable. You see, therefore, computer program per se is a big challenge there. Per se, a computer program is not patentable. Therefore, if you have a core banking solution, obviously in the kind of a CBS, you have computer programs that are running. They may not be patentable.
But it depends. Let me just clarify that a bit. There are two kinds of softwares. So what happened in the year 2005, the Patent Act in the year 2005 said software is not patentable. Before 2005, in the Indian Patent Act. In 2005, the Parliament added the word, the software per se is not patentable. So they added the word per se in 2005. Before that, the words were software is not patentable. So when they added the word per se, with all due respect to all the parliamentarians, some of it is being already there in the Europe. So Europe also says software
computer program
per se.
Computer program per se, not the software.
Yeah.
Computer program
per se. Sorry. Term is computer program per se is not patentable even in Europe, even in the US, and now in India as well. What is per se? So which means computer program is patentable if it has certain qualifications. computer program per se will be called, if computer program will be called per se if it has some qualifications, computer program will be called patentable if it has certain qualifications. What are these two? We can talk about it for hours together, but I'll just give you a touch of it. We can discuss in detail in our booth. If you are trying to solve a non-technical problem, for example, suppose e-commerce. People were buying stuff from the shops offline. What this guy did was merely put the entire market on the web. Merely putting the market on the web. That is not patentable. It's not technical. Okay. If let's say suppose, so basically things which are happening manually, offline, you're booking let's say hotel, going to the hotel desk, booking a hotel, now you have hotels.com, you can book hotels online, not patentable. Whereas, let's say you have a camera on the phone, the same camera, the same processor, but new software which has come into the phone. With the same camera, same processor, the new software, with the help of new software, you're able to click, capture better quality pictures because now the software is improving the functionality of the camera. Let's say when the camera is capturing a frame, the software is able to identify the frames, identify the pixels, do the voxelization there, making the edges sharper, hence coming out with a better quality picture. It's a technical software. Non-technical softwares are computer program per se, not patentable. Technical softwares, there are a lot of examples of what is technical, what is not technical. Core banking, on the face of it, perhaps maybe non-technical. However, when you go deep into the processes, and if you let's say in the core banking software as well, if a software is able to conserve memory, if a software is able to make a processing faster, mind me, if a computer program is able to conserve memory, if a computer program is able to make the processing faster, reduce computations, it qualifies for a patent. That will not be called as a computer program per se. So therefore, when we, on top of it, we don't say anything. We have to understand in detail how the invention works, how the software works. Are you doing only non-technical, technical things? Are you solving some issues, some technical problems? Are you making the processing faster? Are you conserving memory? Are you doing this? If yes, it's technical, it's patentable. If no, it's not patentable. Yes, now I can answer a few questions if you want, if you have some.
What is the latest news on the patents that was, I think it was last month that had come, this C, it was something related to the number C there. Was it the same thing? Because
okay, I'll take that. You see, what happened is, in law, nothing has changed. Okay, let me kind of start that as a caveat.
Yes.
What happened is, when it came to computer-related inventions, the government came out with guidelines for the examiners in the patent office to clarify what Amit just now mentioned about what is a computer program per se, which is the non-technical kind of computer-related inventions, and what could be considered as computer programs which are patentable. So broadly, those guidelines have been issued. Now, it's a different topic and a subject altogether. I think NASSCOM has kind of told us, saying this is the best that you can do today. Okay, because there are problems in the CRI guidelines. I'm just overstepping the brief what NASSCOM gave. We're not saying anything against the government per se. We are saying there are problems in the guidelines. Having said that, it's not a law. law continues to remain the same. That's what came somewhere in, what, January?
Feb 19.
Yeah, Feb 19. That's
Yeah.
Feb 19. CRI guidelines for examiners.
So what happens is, like, say, the guidelines which came, they themselves say that if there's a conflict between guidelines and the law, law will prevail. And the law does not say what the guidelines say. So therefore, law will prevail.
So it's just guidance to the examiners.
Yes.
Let's put it that way.
Sure.
You talked about the new software which, let's say, makes the camera photograph better, right? You said it might be patentable. But you also said that the mathematical method is not patentable. At the root of that software might be some mathematics which actually makes the software better. So
all software,
I mean, you say that the software is patentable, but the mathematical method is not patentable.
Excellent question. Excellent question. Let me paraphrase that. Ultimately, software है क्या? Background में क्या चल रहा है? Mathematics चल रहा है. That is why we tell you, as an inventor of a software product, that please don't try to patent your inventions yourself, or you might end up claiming the mathematical formulas and algorithms. When you come to a patent attorney or a professional who is in the patent professional, he will not focus on the mathematical algorithms running in the background for the purpose of drafting a patent. He will focus on the features of the invention and how exactly those features are happening without putting in the patent the mathematical part. Because if you put the mathematical part, if you put the algorithm part in the patent will be rejected most likely. Therefore, patent drafting is, we have learned in over years, it's an art. What to put, what not to put is very important.
No, Amit, I think just kind of sidestepping the issue on the fundamental part of it. I think he is right in terms of saying that go to a professional, he will guide you in terms of what to do. Stepping that aside, I'm saying, in the case that Amit mentioned, one of the things is that if in the process of your software or in the process of a computer programming, it has a hardware interface and it changes the characteristics of the hardware, it ceases to remain only a mathematical formula. And that's where your claim needs to be couched to say that it is really looking at increasing the efficacy of a hardware. That is patentable. There is a thin line there, and there are various things which will fall in the gap. There are cracks in there in the entire theory, and I think world over, everybody is struggling on this. It's not that it's only problem here with India.
Well, what happened in the US, and the US is actually very famous for stupid patents. What do you call a stupid patent? In the US, what happened, one day a lady went out for a walk and she had a cat with her and a laser beam. She put a laser beam on the wall, the cat was jumping on the wall. She put a laser beam on the floor, the cat was jumping on the floor. She filed a patent, a method for exercising a cat using a laser beam. And it's a granted patent, by the way. It's a granted patent in the US. So what happened, the stupid patents are too many in the US, just too many, uncountable. What they do, in 2014, last year, June 19 again, the Supreme Court of the US woke up. कि ये क्या हो रहा है? सबको patent दे रहे हो. And then they had more stricter guidelines which actually fall in line with the Indian law or the European law. That please do not give away patents to such stupid inventions. They're rejecting a lot of stuff now, a lot of stuff.
Thank you.
And now they also have little more stricter parameters of what will qualify, what software, what computer program will qualify as a patent and what will not.
Is this word stupid a legal term or technical term?
That is the conference terminology.
It's startup terminology. Right.
Just one more question on the patent. So let's say Zika is a virus and then somebody comes with an invention which is really unique and a drug which will actually cure it. But since it is going to be a maybe a global calamity, what are the overriding factors? Because the humankind cannot wait for them to release it, to the masses, and the drug can be probably sold at a cheaper because the poor are affected. Would there be any government intervention where whatever patent law says, there's some law which supersedes it and actually, makes it available to people?
Public policy.
You answer, Swaz?
Yeah, there is a concept of public policy there. You may have, in such circumstances, this I think happened in HIV at the initial stage. The issue was really the governments or the patent office can actually put conditions while granting the patent to say that you're not going to charge royalties or the license fees which are phenomenally high, but they have to make sure that it is available at the affordable prices to the public at large. They can actually, under the public policy guidelines, reject granting of monopolistic rights to the patent holder and invention. So that overriding public policy factor today, and this is again across the jurisdictions is happening, whether it is in US or in India, I think the compulsory licensing and the public policy overwhelming grounds to say that these kind of practices which are not in the public interest is to be kind of looked at differently. Prior to any disclosure or even discussion anywhere in commercial use, definitely.
Okay.
You can't. There have been patent applications rejected because the scientists talked about it in a science forum.
Okay.
They've been rejected because that's a public disclosure that has already happened.
And are those the only two categories of process and product, or can there be a combination of process and product?
Sorry, come on.
Product by process, process by product.
Combination
Product by process, or process by product.
Process by product, all those. And that's kind of gets commingled there. Yes, sure, madam.
It is, okay. What happens is, India takes a long time for everything.
No, it does. I don't agree with you.
But it's changing. It is changing.
In India, everything happens in 6 weeks. But 6 weeks are not consecutive weeks. You will have interval of 2 years between 2 weeks.
Yeah. I'll tell you. Let me answer that question. So what's happening is, patent and IP has the ministry is under the central government. They have a lot of focus on IP. Even if you see the startup speech that Modi gave, talk about patents and talk about IP and stuff like that. I will just gumao the answer a bit, okay? In the US, it today takes approximately 30 months, 2.5 years for average to get a patent from the date of application, from date of apply. In Europe, approximately the same time. In India, it takes approximately 5 years. Now, Mr. Modi's, one of the vows is that he wants to reduce this 5 years to 15 months. So there's a lot of pendency of applications in the Indian patent offices. There are approximately 400 patent examiners, and in the last 5 months, and in the next 5 months, they're going to be hiring 600 more patent examiners. So the pendency will reduce and time will reduce gradually.
And I think, see, NASSCOM is very closely working with the government on ensuring that number of patent examiners are increased, and I think that's a very clear agenda. It takes about 5 years today, just a straight answer.
Yeah,
yes. You can.
Yes.
No, when the patent is granted, it will be granted with what is known as priority date. So from the date of application, your period for 20 years would be counted. So you can actually, pending your application, stop somebody who is infringing your patent.
So if filed on day 1, no matter it gets granted on 60th month, your rights are from day 1. Somebody else cannot file a patent on day 10 because you have already filed on day 1.
Then there is another provision called provisional application. You may not be clear in terms of all your claims today. You can file a provisional application today and get that priority date from today onwards because you conceptualize something. Within a year you can file your final application, till then you can frame up what you have to do.
And suppose you have a lot of, in software domain, you have versions, right? Version 1, version 1.5, version 1.3, and you keep on adding features. So what we generally do is, after you file the parent, we call a parent application, then you keep on filing a patent of additions, which means if feature add kiya, usko link kar diya, we file one more patent. Then you can file multiple patent of additions with new features that you keep on adding to your software, and you create a portfolio of patents, which is nothing but your intellectual property, your assets.
Can we, I think we're running out of time.
Yeah.
So
we'll go quicker?
I think, no, we'll skip the toolkit.
Okay. Toolkit.
We'll go to the startups.
Because we have answered all the questions a lot of already.
Yeah, we've already answered the questions. We'll take the Q&A later on, but I think what we should do is, what we'll try and do is we'll skip the toolkit approach. You can kind of contact us and we'll guide you through in terms of how that happens. There are various other kind of toolkits available. Just, can we? Copyright. What we would want to cover is, oops, okay. What we wanted to cover is what's happening on the startup, and I think we'll spend about last 10 minutes. I know you, sorry. 10 minutes, okay. I know when you walked in, I realized I had to expedite. No, you'd probably need the room for someone else, which is fine.
We are actually open to go, but it's just between, people will have time to eat lunch.
Yeah, sure. So actually, I think what's happening on the startup as a kind of a buzzword, very clearly we were surprised when we got this kind of guidelines for examination on computer-related inventions. On one hand, the definition of startup is for the first time emerging. You do not have the same definition in any jurisdiction anywhere in the world today. You have somewhat similar what is known as JUMP, our startup business, our business startups in the US called Jobs Act, which primarily focuses on saying that startups need to be funded and investments need to happen. So it talks about crowdfunding, it talks about alternate investment platforms and things like that. For the first time in the world, a definition is emerging here of a startup. And it says a new product or service or process. Now this is totally different from patents. This is totally different from IPR. A first time definition that has come. What it says is that an entity is considered working towards innovation, development, or before that, just I'll step up a bit. Startup is defined to mean A, B, C. There is first a criteria about your existence in time span. So what it says is that a business entity that is not more than 5 years old is a startup. Second, it says you not cross the turnover of 25 crores. That's the second criteria for somebody to be considered a startup. The third criteria, which is critical, and all three are required to be satisfied, is that it has to be working towards innovation, development, deployment, or commercialization of new products, processes or services driven by technology or intellectual property. So the clear focus is on technology and intellectual property. Very clearly, if you do not satisfy the criteria C, You may have a business doing something which is traditional. It will not qualify to be a startup. Then I think they've also clarified by way of explanation, and this is by way of a DIPP notification that has come in. So this is the law of the land as it stands today. The entity is considered to be working towards innovation, development, deployment, commercialization of new products, processes, and services driven by technology or IP. If it aims to develop and commercialize a new product or service or process, or a significantly improved existing product or service or process that will create or add value for customers or workflow. Does the e-commerce get satisfied here? Forget about the patenting part of it. Does it come in here? Probably. Then it says that provided that mere act of developing product, service, process which do not have potential for commercialization, or indifferentiated product, services or processes, or product, services, processes with no or limited incremental value for customers. This is where the e-commerce will falter, or workflow would not be covered under this definition. This is what the law of the land today is. When you talk about IP, you will look at basically the three enactments on trademark, copyrights and patents. Focus when it comes to technology on patenting, and if your workflow is not going to satisfy the patentability criteria, it will not be considered as IP. That's a big problem here. That's why when we talked about startups, I think one of the key elements is that you need to ensure that your ideas are your ideas, not someone else's, and they qualify on the IP part of it. Just a quick recap in terms of what they are saying. Most of this was already existing, by the way. It was there somewhere as a concession for MSMEs, is being brought in as concession for startups. Not that the patent fees are very high. If you really qualify for a great invention and innovation, I think the fees are negligible by any standards. There are hundreds of patent examiners that have been recruited by the government to look at the computer per se, the software per se kind of a stuff. They've created, of course, DAITY is the one department that NASSCOM very closely works with. NRDC is integrating or trying to integrate various universities and research facilities across India. TIFAC is becoming the apex body for government and semi-government and the kind of university related research establishments as a IP facilitation council there. There are certain grants. There is a 10% taxation cap on royalty earned from patents from 2017. And when I talked at the beginning of the presentation saying we're seeing some signs of inflection point here. What's come out for the first time in the budget is a provision which says, and which will be effective from 1st April 2017, is to say that if your income is derived from the royalties for or in respect of royalties earned on global exploitation of your intellectual properties, it will qualify for 10% tax on income. You won't get additional deductions that you would otherwise have got on R&D, the 35G kind of provisions. But this is one way, nowhere in the world except probably Singapore, the IP income is considered as 10% of tax. If this is implemented correctly, I think large portion of global business on R&D and creation of IP will come to India. This could be an inflection point if we implement this right. I think what we would want to request is at least Amit, why don't you ask some of our guests to come up to the dais?
I'm not sure if Nilesh is here or no, they're not here. So we actually
Kiran is here.
Kiran is here. Yes. We have helped Kiran from Encrypt Technology. Nilesh, the CEO of ThinkSmart, and big companies like TCS, we've been working with them and other companies for patenting and other IP needs for years together. Kiran can talk about a bit about what they did in what their invention was and how we helped them in the IP space.
Hi, I'm Kiran Natraj. I founded Encrypt Technologies in 2011. We are into industrial IoT, and we've got a product called ShopWorks. We filed 2 patents in 2012. The process was very interesting and enlightening. How many are techies out here? I mean, engineers? Okay. And I'll tell you the real reasons why we did, apart from, of course, the commercial, etc. We, as engineers, we have a certain level of an ego that is there. And it's a good test to your ego as to what you've, built is unique or not. That was the reason why we, said, because we didn't have any, saying that, okay, we are going to, commercialize or, in the sense, not commercialize, but defend it or etc. That's a separate, this thing. But when we started designing our platform, building it out, we thought we had a whole ton of new ideas, which, we searched around and said, these are unique ideas that are there. And when we approached Legacies, we actually had a list of around 8 potential ideas in which they immediately dished, like some of them. And we actually could file 5, or rather we had narrowed it down to filing 5, but at that time we were limited in funds, so we said let's just focus on the top 2, place our bets on the top 2. The real reason we went in, and the process itself is really interesting because it forces you to really, think through technically as well in terms of, what your idea is and how different it is. And then once you go out there and look for ideas, it's a different world. So, what you think is a unique idea, others also obviously think about it. But coming back to the main point, do it, at least go through the process once of, trying to file a patent and this thing. It's a eye-opening kind of experience. So, thanks.
Thank you, Kiran. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, I think we've kind of got to the end of the session. Thank you very much. I don't know if we've clarified some things or we've confused it further, because that's always the case when we talk about something which relates to the legal provision and the current developments that are happening. However, you're welcome to kind of touch base with us, and we would try to kind of clarify the air and try to demystify. Sorry, we didn't get enough time to do the toolkit approach. What our thought was to really pick up a product and pick up how the product happens and how we derive the IPs from it, right from trademarks to patents, and how do you consolidate it. But we can do it some other time. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Suhas and Amit. We really appreciate your coming here, and I'm sure everybody here has actually derived a tremendous amount of information, knowledge, and hopefully will put that to use in their business. Suhas, I request you to give a small gift to Kiran, please.
That's welcome. Thank you very much.
Kiran. Just give that to Kiran. Thank you.
No problem.
Yeah.
Kiran?
Give both.
Thank you.
And a small token of appreciation from our end.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kiran, for coming over. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks.
Thank you so much. We will now break for lunch, but since both Suhas and Amit and even Kiran is here, you can actually speak to them on a one-on-one basis if you have any immediate questions, and probably interchange emails so that you can actually have continued interaction with them. And if required, you can actually join them for lunch and then actually do that over lunch, so you don't have to be staying in the hall at all.
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thanks.